Okay, so welcome to another webinar. We're going to do SQL Lessons 5 and 6 today. So Lessons 5 and 6 cover a variety of things. Don't really seem super related, but with all these SQL concepts, you can combine them together to create interesting queries. So Lesson 5, if you're familiar with Excel, a lot of this stuff will seem very familiar to you. And if you're not, walk through it and know that you can translate a lot of these skills to Excel if you ever needed to or wanted to play around over there. You're going to learn a lot of things like cropping strings from the left or from the right. You can talk about the string position, like where things are located. You can cast or pipe different strings together to create one string, especially if you want to combine first and last names or split up first and last names. One of the ones we're going to talk about today is coalesce. We're going to walk through a problem on coalesce and talk about what that does, because it could be really useful in cleaning your data, which is a huge step of being a data analyst and really important if you're working with data on a larger scale. Okay. Lesson 6 is about window functions. So we're going to talk about the elements of window functions and go over a brief example of things you can do with window functions, especially moving into your project. So we'll talk about an example that kind of can lead you into success on your project if you were to explore data that way. Okay, so we're going to start off in Lesson 5. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so we're going to start off in Lesson 5. Again, we have all of these position, concatenation, casting, and finally we're going to be in coalesce. Now, what's interesting about this example, and I had a lot of students ask me about this, the solutions have something different from what I'm going to show you today. I think that, I mean, both of them work, but I think that the solution I'm going to show you today is a little more intuitive, and we're going to walk through the examples a little bit more. So hopefully it'll be clearer to you, because I thought this one was a little confusing. And like I said, I had a lot of students that asked me about it. So the first thing we're going to do, they give you something to run. Okay, so we're selecting all of the columns from accounts, and we are left joining. So we want all of the accounts joined with orders, okay, on this primary key to foreign key. And we want where the total is null, so there won't be a value there. It's not the value of 0. If it were the value of 0, that's something different. It's just empty, okay? So let's go ahead and evaluate this. It's taking a while. That's fine. Okay, so we have one result where the total is null. So one of the things we're going to look at, all of these are null, just nothing got entered for them. Here's total, the column that we care about. But another thing you'll notice is that the ID is null too. And that's kind of weird, okay? So the first thing that I want to look at, okay, I want to look at let's say how many accounts there are disregarding this null. That's something I'm going to look at. So we'll run it. It's going to take a little while because there should be a lot. Really taking a while because there's a lot. So remember, left join is slower because it has to include everything from accounts and everything from orders, or matched with everything on orders. Left join is definitely slower than join, something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so we have 6,913 results. Okay, cool. All right, we notice we don't have something here. That could be a problem. Okay. All right, let's look at, let's go to accounts and see if we can find Goldman Sachs, okay? Because that's the one that doesn't seem to have an ID. So I'm gonna do where name from accounts is, or is like, we can use like here, because I don't really want to type in Goldman Sachs. I don't really know how to spell that. So I'm just gonna do gold Starts with gold. I know it starts with gold. That'll at least find me what I need. So let's run this. Okay, what's interesting about this, here's our one with Goldman. It has an ID number, okay, but that's not what we saw in the last one, which is really confusing. So in the accounts table, it looks like Goldman Sachs was set up with an ID. And remember, ID on the accounts table is the primary key. So every row should have one, and every row has a unique one. So we have an ID here. The weird thing is, why didn't it show up in the last query? So let's do a little bit more exploring, okay? So let's look at account names. Let's look at the account IDs from the order table. And I'm just gonna throw in O total here since that's something we were looking at before. All right, of course, we need accounts and orders. They left joined. I'm going to full join here. I want everything from accounts and, I already have accounts. I want everything from accounts and orders, not just from accounts, not just from orders, but I want everything because maybe there's multiple Goldman Sachs that don't have IDs. All right, so let's do, we need an on here. On a.id equals o.account ID, that's primary key and foreign key. We should be very familiar with this by now. And I'm gonna order by maybe the account ID. Actually, I should order by, I'll order by the total. All right, so let's see what we get here. This is a full join. It could take a little while. Oh, not as long as left join, apparently. Okay, so we're sorting by total. Now notice that some of these orders were 0, that they just haven't ordered anything, but they still show up in the table and they still have an account ID. Remember, account ID is on the orders table. All right, if we scroll down though, we see that total for Goldman Sachs is null, doesn't exist, and the account ID on the orders table does not exist. So this is the problem. The ID number in the accounts table exists. It has a number. The number is 1731. We found that in a different query. But what we don't have is we don't have that information on the order table. So that's what we're going to use coalesce for. We're going to take the account ID and coalesce it to the order table so that we can use it. Okay. All right. We also need to fix this. That's the second part of the problem. We need a number here, okay? Especially if we were taking an average or something like that. Okay, so let's just make sure that in our join, in our query, that the account ID also works. So let's order by 4 now. Okay, so I'm just adding the account ID here to make sure that it shows up in this full join. It should. We expect that it will. Okay. All right, so this is just kind of merging the ideas that the account ID does exist, just not on the orders table, which is where this column and this column are coming from. Okay, so these two are in the accounts table and these two are in the orders table, and that's what we're missing. Okay, and this is not uncommon. Mistakes happen all the time. It's now, what do we do about this now that we've noticed it? Okay. All right, we're gonna fix this with coalesce. So first thing we're gonna do, we can keep the ID, we can keep the name. In fact, we should keep this here to make sure it's mapping the correct one. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna comment this out, and I'll explain why in a second. Okay, SQL has an interesting comment mark. It's star backslash. So everything in orange there is commented out. It will not run. And actually, I'm going to include this comma in here. Okay. All righty. So I've taken this column out, and what I'm going to replace it with, actually, what I'm going to replace it with is a coalesce statement. So coalesce. Definitely the hardest for me to spell. Okay, so the first part of coalesce is the thing that we want to replace. And the second part of coalesce is the thing we want to replace it with. So we want account ID, okay, this foreign key, we want it to be replaced with this primary key, okay? And I'm going to call this account ID, and I'll explain that in just a second as well. Okay, so first let's see if this works. Okay, remember we should see something in that account ID column. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll down here. Okay, so this has worked for us. We've taken the account ID from here, the first column, and we've now replaced it with this third column, which is coalescing this, dropping the orders table account ID and replacing it with the accounts table ID, which is a primary key unique to each row. Okay, so that looks like it worked out really well. Now, why did I comment this out? Well, the name of this column is account ID. Okay, so let's say I got rid of this, which is the name of that coalesce, and I uncomment this. What we're gonna see is some sadness. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna make this order by 5 now because we still want to order it by the total. All right, so let's see what this did. Okay, so notice we have 5 columns here. We have the account ID, the account name. This is from the orders table. This is this coalesce thing. Notice it doesn't have a name because we didn't give it one. It just called coalesce. And this is the total, what we're used to. Notice that the coalesce is what got replaced here. The actual column in accounts did not. But when I call it, so if I get rid of this, if I comment this out again, if I comment that out and I call this account ID, and we'll order by 4 because we've gotten rid of a column. Account ID is now pointing towards this coalesce statement where I've filled it in with the account ID. So when we go to the bottom, instead of coalesce, we see this as the account ID. Okay. Now, while this is not permanent to the table, something that doesn't get covered in this lesson, you're able to use account ID now using this. And in fact, you could create a CTE, a common table expression, where you coalesce like this, and then you can use account ID from there. Okay, so that's something you could do with this. Right now, it's just a minor fix. All right, the last part asks you to fill in for quantity and some other stuff. The other thing you can do with coalesce is you can take the order total and replace it with 0. Okay. So we'll call this we'll call this total. And we'll see what happens here. Okay, notice it didn't replace everything with 0. Coalesce only takes the first where did Goldman Sachs go? It's going to be up here at 0. Remember, it takes the first non-null value and changes it. So it's not going to change any of these numbers. These numbers exist and they're okay. But it is going to take the ones that are null and fix them. Okay, oh, here's Goldman Sachs. Notice it got fixed with the 0, and then it got moved up because we ordered by the total. Okay, so this is an example of how you can use coalesce to kind of clean your data. Now we have account IDs, which is great. Now we have order totals that are all numerical. So if we take averages, it will count. Yeah, that works out pretty nicely. Okay, so now we're going to go over to lesson 6. Oh, before we go to lesson 6, I wanted to show you, they have this statement here. I gotta tell you, I'm not sure why this is here. All this would do is take an ID and substitute it for itself. What they really do, down here I guess, is the exact same thing that I did, just in one step. Okay, so all you need is this. Notice we are replacing coalescing account ID on the orders table with count ID and calling it account ID. That's the key. This is the actual thing you need to fill in that cell. Okay. A couple other things. It asked you to fill in 0 for other things. Just remember that it's only going to fill in whatever value you put here for for null items. Okay. So it's going to skip over non-nulls. It's not going to replace them. Okay. All right. So coalesce, super useful for cleaning data. I don't like this solution because this is redundant. Yeah. That's like when you say like x equals x or 5 equals 5. It's like, this is true, but not terribly useful. Okay. Lesson 6. Okay, a lot of information here, but the most important ones are about window functions. Okay, row rank, aggregates, aliases, and doing work with percentiles. All of these are on the fundamental part of window functions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully there's no spoiler here. I was playing around in here earlier. We're going to walk through this example, and I'm going to show you how you can use an example like this to help with your project. Okay, so we'll wait for this to load. Okay, so hopefully you watched the previous video in section 2. That'll help. Otherwise, that's okay. We'll talk through it. We're going to create a running total. Can be useful, of standard amount USD in the orders table. And we're going to look at it over order time without truncating the date. We'll talk about truncating dates in our next example. Okay, our final table should have 2 columns. So we want the amount added to each new row. So that is standard amount USD. And we want a running total, which is going to involve a sum and a window function. Okay, so let's get started. First things first, we need to select standard amount USD. Okay, the next thing is we want the sum of the standard amount USD. Okay, so here's where our window function comes into play. We are going to order it by, right? Order it by the order time. So this would be like keeping track of your sales as they come in so that you know any given day how many sales you have. So we are going to start our window function, and we are going to order by occurred. Okay, and let's call this running total. That's pretty standard. Okay, we're selecting this from the orders table. Okay, and we don't need to join anything since all of this exists on the orders table. Okay, so we're summing this over order by as running total. Okay. Okay, so let's look at what we have. We have the standard amount for each of these orders. Okay, and this keeps a running total. So notice when we have 0 here, we didn't add anything between these 2 values. They keep going up and up and up and up. We have no idea when these occurred other than they're sorted by date. So all of these are later. These are later. But as you can tell, we have a lot of rows and the number just keeps getting bigger. So at the end of, I guess, present day, this is our amount of USD for standard, or standard amount of USD. Great job, us. Okay. All right. Building off of this, if you want to take a look at number 5, because this is Windows function 2. So we're going to build off of that. Okay. So let me copy paste that in. Okay. So this is what we had over on the last one. But now we want to modify this query to include partitions. Now, partitioning is really nice because it will kind of chop up our data so that it, like a running total, will start over. So for example, if we want to split it up over years, our running total will keep track until the year switches, and then it will start back at 0 and keep track for us. So this is kind of useful, especially when we want to compare maybe even growth. Like if we were to make a line chart of this, it would be really nice to have different lines for the different years so we could see, month to month or something, or how our sales have grown or something like that. So that could be a purpose for partitioning it by a year, for example. Okay, so this time we're going to truncate occurred at by the year. Okay. And then we're going to partition it by the same year truncated variable. Okay, so we have 3 columns, the sale, the truncated date, and the running total within each year. Okay, so we have, this is the amount we're adding. Let's go ahead and add, the truncated date. So we're going to date trunc. Let's take the year from occurred at. Okay, and let's call this year. That'll be the name of our column. Okay, so now we still want to sum the standard amount USD. We still want to have it over this order, okay, by occurred at. But now we want to partition by, we want to partition it by exactly this. Now, I wish we could call it year. It won't work. And I wish I could tell you why, but I actually don't know why. Best case or best situation is just include this in here. But you can use year in other places, I think. I wonder, and I'll try this at the end just to see. I wonder if you called it something other than this keyword year. Like what if you called it years or something? I wonder if you could use it. I'll try that at the end if you're curious and want to stay tuned. Okay. Remember that this column is optional. It's just required by the problem. But if we took this part out, this would still run. Okay. All right. So we have summing this, partitioning by the year, and ordering it by occurred at. We don't need a comma here. Okay, good check. Okay, so we're summing it over this, partition. Okay, just making sure that's spelled right. Ordered by as running total. Okay, this should run. All right, so let's see what we have. We have the year. We have the amount that we're adding, and we have the running total. So as we scroll, we see 2013. This all looks good. The numbers are still going up until we hit 2014, where it drops to 0 and then adds the next one. So notice these two values are the same. Okay, and then in 2014, it starts adding up again until we hit, after scrolling, 2014 was a very nice year, I suppose, for sales at least. Oof. Until we hit 15, right, where we drop to 0. Okay. All right. So this is a simple window function. Again, it helps you partition your data, and you can order it as well. This is really nice to do so that it breaks it up into chunks but doesn't necessarily aggregate it. Okay, so there's a difference. But I want to show you something you can do with this. It's something you can use later in your project when you have a requirement to use a window function. But I want you to think about how you could use this to find other values. So all this scrolling we did, kind of annoying. All right. Like, for example, I know that my total sales at the end of 2014 is this number, but I had to scroll a long time to get there. Okay. But if I wanted to find the total sales for each year, for example, I could still use this window function. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. This may not be the most efficient way, or even the way that you see it, not necessarily the way that I see it. But it's a way to use a window function to answer a question about the running total. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to see a window function and a subquery in the same query. All right. So what I want to do, keeping in mind that these are running totals, I want to find the maximum of the running totals by year. Okay. That's what I want to do. So what I can do is make this a subquery. Maybe I'll call it T1. Okay. So since it's a subquery, I'm going to select the things that I want. So I want the max of the running total. Okay. The year, and the year, I should say. So those are my two columns. I should have the maximum from this column, which is the ending sum at the end of the year. And I want the year that it occurred, okay, which is given by this date truncation. All right, I want to select that from, oh, I already have one here. I'm going to select it from all of this. Okay. So selecting the max, selecting the year from this table. Now, max is an aggregate, year is not. So that means I need a group by. All right, so my group by, I'm going to group by the second column. That's year. Okay, let's see what this gives us. All right, so this gave us each year and the maximum from the running total, which turns out to be the total amount of sales at the end of the year. Okay, so remember at the end of 2014, this is the number we saw. All right, so again, this is a way you can use a window function to help you answer a question. May not be the most efficient. You might want to approach it a different way. But again, for your project, you'll have requirements for using subqueries, which this is, for using window functions, which this is. So it can be really useful to think of creative ways to combine them to answer a question, like the maximum total or something like that. Okay. Okay, so I promised you guys that I was going to try doing this without year, because year is like a keyword. I'm going to change this to years. So I'm just playing around now. If you're done watching, you can be done watching. I'm not going to say anything else. Okay, I'm going to call this years. And then what I want to see is if I can make this years. I have to change this too. Okay. So let's see if that works. I don't know. Well, it looks good. No, column years doesn't exist. Like I said, I'm not sure why that's true. Like why I can't use this alias here. This should be capital. I'm not sure why I can't use it here. But it could be because window functions are processed first. And so if you put years here and the alias is here, SQL just might not organize it in that order. That would be my guess. But that was a fun little inquiry. Okay. Also, I recommend avoiding the words that turn up purple like that. It just lets you know that it's like a keyword in SQL, so just be careful. You might call it years or, yeah, annual or something like that. So, okay. Thank you so much for listening to this webinar. I hope I cleared up some questions about Coalesce. I hope I showed you how to use window functions in a way that will help you answer questions. Again, there are lots of uses for them. I just wanted to show you one, and hopefully that will help you kind of leading into your project. There will be another webinar to help you with your project. So I hope that you'll join me for that and ask some questions, and I am happy to answer them. Good luck moving forward. Take a look at that project and come prepared to ask questions. Thanks so much. See you next time.